Hello, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 2 for The Hunted. On this episode, we're going to have Lewis from Dominant Strands Bowstrings, which we can't wait to get talking with him and pick his mind, because I'm sure it's like anything else. You don't really know how in-depth things are until like you really start getting into doing something tedious and making stuff. So Dominant Strands Bowstrings, like I said, we're going to have Lewis on here, and then we're going to go through and do our other sponsors here because we couldn't do it without them. So we got Rec Broadheads. I'm shooting the FX4s. Levi's shooting the XP. He's blowing holes in deer. It's awesome. Then we got Wild Oak Whitetails, a little local dealer here. He's probably 20 minutes away from me, good buddy of mine. He does everything, one deer, one bottle. I'm pretty sure he does it literally in his backyard. I mean, it's awesome. You go out there and he's got deer running around everywhere. And then ECW Hunting Calls. They're down by the Peoria area. If I remember correctly, Jeff's awesome. He's went through. He's kind of kicked the. I believe the calls he gave us, I think, was like a prototype, kind of an idea that he had.
Oh, okay.
So we got kind of a prototype kind of deal. I think he was talking about. I had a call from his last year. I mean, they're good, handmade. They're solid, and wonderful. And then we're gonna have a local guy sponsored us here, good buddy of mine, Marath Welding. So if you're listening to this, I'm not joking, dude. I don't know nothing about welding, but I guarantee if he wanted to, he could weld a dime on a gnat's ass. I mean, this dude knows his stuff. It's great and awesome. And then, just like we did in the last one, I'm going to let Levi talk about the nature-made jewelry that his lovely wife does.
Yeah, it's pretty much all right now made out of all the shed antlers we find every year. No animals were harmed in the making of those.
Oh, yeah, it's too real bad. You got to say that now.
Yeah. But, yeah. So, we're making rings, necklaces, bracelets. We've even done a few custom things. Going to be having some keychains coming out and a few other lines of Western wear, elk and mule deer stuff.
That's awesome. So I guess we're just going to hop right into it. Can you hear me there, Lewis?
I can. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes, sir. We can. Thank you so much for hopping on here with us. We're just I think we're all kind of in the same boat, just some two rednecks just wanting to talk about the good old outdoors and all that.
Well, I'll agree to that.
Yes.
I do have one thing right off the bat after listening to your spiel about all this. You know why that those antlers are not, nothing's harmed in the making of that jewelry? That's because I shot it and it's got antlers on it. You're not making jewelry out of it.
It's on the wall.
Wow.
Right.
Just saying.
Exactly. So, well, thank you so much again for being on here.
Absolutely.
I know we talked a little bit that I'm gonna do is the best that I can to keep us on track and kind of keep us without, rolling off too far and talk about this and that. But we're definitely going to have you back on for another episode or 2 or 3 or 4 or however it goes, because if people don't know me, I'm a talker. And I know you're a talker, and once we get Levi going, he's a talker. So it's going to take us a while. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of jump right into some questions I got for you.
Let's oh boy, this could be scary because I have no idea what you're going to ask.
Oh, that's what makes it good, buddy. That's what makes it good. We'll start you off good and easy. So, so I guess how long have you been in the quote unquote the hunting industry?
Well, honestly, that's a question that's kind of hard to answer. It depends on your definition of in the industry.
Well, I know that you and I have talked before, and you said your dad was kind of into doing this and that, and when you were a child, you kind of dabbled
tagged along.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of start there.
Well, I mean, I guess it all honestly started with my grandfather. My grandpa had a shop and dealt bows and worked on bows, and him and my grandma shot competition archery, and they got, of course, my dad and my aunt into that world. And then in the 90s, my father and his friend started a shop in the local bowling alley here, and then when they quickly outgrew that, they got a building here in town, and they started their own bow shop. And through that, I was shooting and learning to work on bows with my dad and Carl, and then was lucky enough to tag along with him as he did outdoor events and shows and things, and meet other people in the industry. And then one thing led to another, and as I got older and kind of come into my own right, so to speak, shooting and working on stuff, then I started to get people asking if I would do that kind of stuff on my own, and so I ended up shooting on staffs and working with companies, and it just kind of has progressed from there. So, if you really wanted to get technical, my dad said in a conversation we had with another gentleman, asked that question one time, and he was standing there, and somewhere around 10, 12 years old, I started turning wrenches on bows and working on stuff and being a part of the shop and the industry, so to speak.
That's awesome. So you did it for probably what, 5-6 years then?
Yeah.
So with all that being said, being into it, and like you said, turning wrenches and all that stuff into that, what? I mean, I know you I guess you dibble dabble a little bit of everything on that side, right? As far as bow work and stuff. What made you decide to go through and get on the string side and get Dominant Strands going?
Well, it's a really long story and a really convoluted story, so to speak. But I had spent some time in the Air Force, and I was injured, and I got out, retired medically, and I really honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I had not known anything work-wise since I got out of high school with the military. So at that point, it was like, okay, now what do I do? What do I do? And everybody that I'd always known in the industry had always said, stay out of the business side. You like to hunt, you like to do that stuff, stay out of this side of it. If you go to that side, you're gonna lose the ability to do this stuff as much. And somehow, some way, I wound up. I was doing an ATA show. I met some guys that were semi-local to me that I did not know of before. Got to be friends with one of them, and he was an owner in a shop, and he was working on bowstrings and building bowstrings and trying to push bowstrings out. And of course, I had done that kind of work, but it wasn't like I was doing it currently. So long story short, they had a part-time kid that helped them. That kid got out. One guy was wanting to get out of the shop. The other guy was wanting to try to build the shop more. And I happened to be in there one day shooting and visiting, and he's like, hey, we could use the help. Is there a chance? I haven't had a day off in 3 months because we don't have any extra help. Is there a chance you can help me a day? And one thing led, I said, sure, I can come run the shop for a day, give you a day off. One thing led to another, and we created Dominant Strands.
And you haven't had a day off in how many years after that, right?
Pretty much 3.
Right.
That entity started there, and then what ended up happening was some business decisions went on, and that entity actually dissolved and went away. However, Dawn and I did not want to let Dominant Strands go. We had created something, and we didn't want to let that side of it go. So we weren't sure how we were going to do that, what we were going to do exactly, but we knew we didn't want to let it go. So there's some other things happening. The grace of God, stuff got laid in my lap. And without that stuff happening, it would not have worked out.
Right.
However, it did. Obviously, somebody had a plan that I didn't see until it was already started. And then Dominant Strands version 2.0 was born. And with that happening, we moved it to Rushville, which is my hometown. And then we moved it into my buddy's garage, helping us get it going, Rob. And from there, within a year, we were looking for somewhere else to go because we had already outgrown that space.
Yeah, because I believe one of the last times me and you talked, it was you were right in the middle of getting from one shop to the other shop.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So we actually found a building in town that was a grocery store, and some folks had bought it, and they were wanting to renovate it and turn it into basically business locations and places for business to rent office spaces. And I talked to them and was like, this is what I want to start. This is what I envision possibly in the future. Is that something you can handle? And they went, absolutely, we would love to do that. So we went to work drawing up and designing the initial part of the building that we were going to take, and they went to work renovating it. And it was just a big giant open space with tile, grocery store tile floor. and they ended up turning it into what we see today as the shop. And we've got the front retail area out front. We keep expanding that slowly, and then of course we have the string building area and an office for me. So I actually have a private office. I'm not sitting in the middle of the floor anymore.
Right, not
awesome.
Being the big dog now, got your own little room.
Yeah. So I don't have to sit in the middle of everything anymore. So it's
Right.
kind of nice. I can go in and have a meeting if I need to, whatever, with the dealer. And it's been a non-stop adventure for the last
awesome.
3 years now.
That's awesome.
I couldn't have asked for anything else.
Right, and I'm not trying to be rude about this, but I don't know.
No.
Levi, does he sound like he keeps cutting out?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. So I don't know if it's on.
Am I?
Yeah. So I think it might.
Yeah,
be on there,
sometimes, yeah, it probably is. Sometimes the signal around here is not the best.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
it does, just say so.
Yeah, I was gonna
Try
say so. Yeah, so if I ask you to repeat something, I'm not trying to be that much of a jerk. I just literally couldn't hear
No, and hopefully I'll move the phone. I'll move my phone out here toward the door, and maybe that'll get us a little better
Gotcha.
signal.
First off, I don't want to be a jerk. So I want to tell you thank you for your service.
you. Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much.
And it is awesome to be working with a company that is local, American made, veteran owned and operated.
Yes, and that
Thank you,
and
appreciate that.
yeah, and it was one of those things when I was sitting there and looking around and talking with people and things like that. Like when I found that out, I mean, that was definitely my eyes. My eyes looked a little bit harder at you, and then I mean, I don't know if you remember, but man, me and you we hit it off like right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked for I think it was 45 minutes. My wife came out and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know, talking to some guy." I mean, it was
Talking to some guy I've never met.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it was great. It was great. So, okay, so let's again, like I said, if we're going to keep going off topic, we're going to try to pull us back into where we're going here. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm sure they're going to be kind of like a basic question for you, but I think these are good questions for just like the general public, to where these might be questions that they have. So, what is some basic information or things that you can suggest to have people keep their strings in good condition? Because I know I didn't realize how much like wear and tear go on strings until I started changing some strings. And then, I mean, some of them get really bad.
Yep. The biggest factor is, of course, waxing them. Now there is a company now that come out with a few years ago a waxless string.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a coated material. We don't use it here in the shop. We have played with it a couple of times, but it was not something that we weren't 100% pleased with the way it worked and
wasn't that what you
way it worked in our system.
Yeah, I was say, wasn't that what you and I talked about when we were talking about strings before
Mm-hmm.
to get done? You
Yep.
were like, they kind of slip, they don't hold as snug.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wasn't as pleased with that, but even more on the technical side, it was also the fact that their color palette was not as big, so we weren't able to offer. If we used that particular brand, we were not able to offer as large of a color palette and design for the strings. It was limited. So waxing the strings, it would be one of the biggest things, and a lot of people just don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can over wax. You don't want a whole lot of buildup, but you need to be waxing them, every other time you shoot.
Oh, really?
Even if
That
you don't
often?
shoot, I would recommend it. Yeah, just a little. You don't have to put very much on.
Right.
You just want to rub a little light coat and rub it in good with your fingers. Don't use anything else. One of the other things that a lot of people do that you don't think about is before you do that, take a cloth and kind of lightly wipe or brush the string. Because you want to knock dust and dirt off of debris off of there before you put the wax and rub. Otherwise, all you're doing is pushing all that into the string, and that itself will actually create friction inside the strands of the string, and that's what creates part of the issue.
Oh man, I'm just going to cut you off just real quick. I mean, me and Levi, we were sitting here and we were talking earlier about how we can't wait to start talking to guests and other people and things like that, because we're going to have aha moments. And we both just looked at each other when you said, just lightly take that off, get that crap out of there and go through it. Dude, we both, no joke, we looked at each other
We're like,
and we
Duh.
Yeah. Duh. I mean, we both looked at each other and lifted our heads up, and we were like, "Oh shit, okay."
Just simple thing that you just don't think about before you do it, and
now
that's one thing.
Now that you say that, I have noticed in the past when I have waxed my string at certain times, I've seen that wax change colors, and I'm like, wonder what that's from. Well, there it is.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, you're not taking, especially your hunting bow, you're not taking it out to a clean area and shit.
No.
I mean, you're dragging it through all this and everything else, hanging it up. It's getting wet and windy. Yeah.
Well, and you think about it, you're out there during harvest season when there's the most amount of dust in the air that there ever, dust during harvest and spring planting. That's when there's the most dust in the air.
Man, I think.
And you're hanging your bow on the edge of a field. There's probably 30 farmers within a 10-mile radius running a combine, blowing dust all over the place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Dude, I hope, hopefully anybody is listening. I mean, to me, like I said, that was definitely an aha moment. So I just want to say that again. Yes, go through, make sure you just lightly rub down that string before you throw that wax in there. And I didn't again,
some of
that dirt out of there. You mean, I never ever would have thought about that, because to me, it's a string. You're supposed to wax it and you're done.
Yep. So then the other thing would be, don't wax the serving areas. That's not good for it. It will actually work its way down in the serving, will grind it. Grind in that way. It's not something you want to do. So just wax the unserved areas. Okay. Another thing is that most people don't realize is how you store it. So if you're hanging that bow up in the summer in your garage, leaving it in the case, things like that, just like not storing your gun in a case all the time, because it draws the metal on the bow will do the same thing the metal on the gun will do, and doesn't change temperature as easily because the metal stays cooler. Then what happens is it draws the moisture. Well, on a gun, it's going to draw it out of the air only because there's nowhere else to get it. However, on a bow, the string has moisture in it, and it will suck it right out of that string. It will dry rot that string, and it's extremely damaging to it.
Oh, wow.
So the material will break down faster because you're storing it in your case all the time.
So
if you can get it out in a temperature-controlled environment, closet, whatever in the house, not in the garage, not in the attic, not in the storage shed, but in the house where you keep it temperature-controlled and hang it in the open environment where it can change temperature the way the rest of everything else does.
That's very interesting. Matter of fact, when you're talking about this right now, I mean, I got heat in my shop, and I'm looking at my bow and sitting here thinking about that, because one thing that I started doing now is, I don't know what you want to call them. I got one of those covers you put on from one cam to the other cam, and it covers your strings up and everything.
Yep.
So I got one of those that I kind of been keeping on there because I've been sitting here thinking about, like stuff nicking my strings.
Well, now that's a little different because it's essentially open air, though, because that thing's not sealed around it.
Okay.
So that's a different story. Doing that is actually, as long as the air can breathe in and out, and you're not sealing it like you do a case, then you're still protecting the string and allowing the air to breathe the way it's supposed to, which means you're not hurting it any. So it's actually not a bad way to store it.
So all I'm getting out of this is that I'm a genius because I thought of this before you said anything.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Right.
So basically, you don't want to be that guy that we have all been to the bow shop, puts his bow away after the rut, doesn't pick it up again until August, September. It's been in the case, not climate controlled, and I need new strings.
Yeah, that's the guy that walks in my shop 2 days before season starts and then is upset because he's not going to get his bow back for at least 2 weeks.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's not something, I mean, by that point, we're backed up. We've got string orders not only here local, but we've also got string orders coming in from dealers all across the U.S. and Canada, and you're not getting it that fast. It's not happening.
Man, just those two tips right there. I mean, dude, they were definitely both aha moments. And once you explain the way they are, I'm like, dude, that makes complete sense. Complete sense.
Now the other one is actually a recommendation. This is the last one I've gotten on that department. This is actually a recommendation from BCY, which is the company that makes the material.
Yep.
That we use on the bowstrings. So they make the base materials we use. They say that material is good for 2 years. peak performance, regardless of whether you're shooting it or not. However, if you shoot it more frequently, it will shorten that lifespan. But if you put the strings on a bow, it's under tension at that point, and you hang it, and you don't touch it, and you do everything else the way it's supposed to be, but you don't shoot it, in 2 years, that material is no longer at peak performance. So to maintain peak performance, you need to change it every 2 years at minimum, or 2 to 3 years maximum. And the reason for that is because the materials are kind of a elasticy type thing. They actually have some stretch, some bounce in them. And they have to, so that they don't explode your bow, because your bow doesn't do deadpan stop. That would be really hard on everything.
Okay.
So when that happens, you can actually exceed that time frame, and your strings may not look bad. But I will guarantee you, if you were to take and shoot it through a chronograph and monitor it, you will begin to see slight decreases in your speed and performance after that 2 to 3 year mark. And that's just because the materials are breaking down. They don't have that snapback that they had previously when they were brand new. And so then, of course, if you're shooting it a lot, I've got guys that shoot 3,000 or 4,000 shots in a matter of 2 or 3 months, and we change their strings every 2 or 3 months. Wow. Now, those are some of our competition people that shoot, a lot of arrows. And so, yeah, they go through them a lot faster. But most people, that's usually one of the things. We get a guy in here that's got, that old Matthews solo cam. That nobody wants to get rid of that thing. Well, it's got original strings on it. They bring it in, we put strings on it, and they shoot it here in the shop, and then they look at us and go, wow, that just seems faster. You're going, oh, it is.
Oh, yeah, no, I can 100% say back up that, because when you went through and you sent us me and Levi strings, we put those on there, and I mean, I shot mine, I was like, dude, this thing seems faster, and I mean, I'm sure it is, but dude, it seems a lot quieter, like that slap or something's gone.
Yep.
And that kind of got us on the topic of one of the questions I had is, what all happens to those strings with age, with shots? I know they stretch, but what are some of the variables, or what are all the variables that can happen as that string ages, or with all the shots that it's taken?
Right. So to start, you kind of got to go through the history of strings in general for that. We used to have, of course, had catgut strings back in the, early days of bows and arrows and the caveman days, so to speak, medieval times. But then once we started actually creating the materials like Dacron and that we use in fast flight, stuff like that, the bows that we would have seen as kids, the bows even a little bit before that, that material led to the materials that we use today. That material is really, really stretchy and doesn't have any, it constantly is pulling apart and what they call creep. So that was why, as we moved to fast flight materials and stuff like that, away from B50 to fast flight, Dynaflight, that is why you always saw the rubber peep tubes, because the peep kept turning and you were constantly having to take it to your bow shop guy and have him time the cams and all that stuff.
Yep.
That material never stops creeping, and it's constantly elongating the fibers. So as you're pulling on it, it just constantly elongates, keeps getting longer and longer and stretching. So then to get away from that, companies started developing blended materials that we use today in most more modern compounds. That's why you can see the peeps, like the strings that I sent you guys. You don't need a rubber tube. Once you set the peep, it should stay where it's at and come back every time. That material actually has a blend. So it's got schema, Dyneema, and a material called Vectran in it. And those materials don't elongate as easily as fast flight Dacron materials and stuff like that of the old days. So then what happens is, it's kind of like you take a rope and you keep pulling it tight. Like you watch the old guys down on the river at the barge, and they wrap the rope, and every time the barge comes to us, pulls the rope to a tight, and it pops, and you can see the little fibers fuzz up on the rope. The same thing is happening every time you shoot your bow. So when you're shooting, it's taking that and popping it at its extreme point, and dead end and stops. Well, it just keeps popping those fibers, and they just break just ever so slightly each time. And that's why you get that fuzziness on your string. You put more wax on it to keep that fuzziness down, keep it moisturized. The more moisturized you keep it, the better shape you keep it in, the longer it will last, because the softer strings don't break. If it was all dry, you go get an old rope hanging out of your grandpa's barn that's all dry rotted, and you jerk on it, it'll break.
Right in half. Yeah.
Well, because it's lost all that moisture. Same thing with a bowstring. The more moisturized it is, that's why we wax it. Keeps that from happening so much, but it still inevitably happens. It'll eventually just keep breaking the fibers down little by little.
Very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. So, okay. So you kind of answered a couple of my questions just in that one. Let me see here in my notes. Okay. So how long does it take to make a set of strings? I mean, I'm talking just your plain Jane general. I mean, you're not trying to rip out a whole bunch, because people are putting in a ton of orders. I'm talking just you sit down, make one set of strings. But how long does that take?
Well, it depends, honestly. It depends on the string, like you said, plain Jane.
Yep.
What you're making. To lay it out, to put it in the super server and twist it. Then it's going to go to the stretcher for a length of time. Then it's going to come back. Because we have the capability here to be doing more than one thing at once, we can actually knock that time down to where it takes about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
From start to finish, and that includes the stretch time. But part of that is because we are able to we can be making or serving strings while other strings are on the stretchers.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Yeah.
So we're turning a string out every 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, because stuff's overlapping.
Gotcha. In all honesty, from start to finish, if you were just to lay one out, put it in the super server and twist it, put it on the stretchers, wait for it to be done, bring it down, you're probably looking at closer to 2 hours from start to finish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So because you got 5 minutes to lay it out, and then you got to serve each end of that to get your end loops, and then it goes to the twist, and you get it twisted, and it's up on the machine, up on the stretchers. It's got to stretch. You start the next piece, you do, let's say, a standard 3-piece string. Now you got to change the jigs, change your measurements, set the jig for the next piece, then lay it out, serve the end loops on it, then you go twist it, put it on the stretcher, you go back and get the next one. You do that. Well, you can say that takes 5 to 7 minutes a piece to do that. By the time you get them all on the stretcher, the first one's not off yet. So now you got some downtime. Then by the time it comes off and you start serving, then the next piece comes off and next piece. So yeah, it's probably closer to an hour and a half to 2 hours by the time.
But there is but you were saying there is some downtime though. It's not like you're working on a string for a straight.
You're not working on that string for that straight 2 hours.
I gotcha.
That's how long it takes from the time you started it until the time that last piece comes through. But that downtime and the way we're set up here, which is the way most bigger manufacturers are set up, we have multiple stretching units. So we can be stretching, that downtime when all 3 pieces of that string are stretching, we're already starting the next set of strings on the jig. So when it goes when it goes on the server and hanging then up to the jigs and up on the stretcher, it starts stretching before the other string's even coming off. So that way we're constantly flowing.
Right.
And once we get started for the day, then we can rack them out pretty quick.
I'm sure it's different when being busy to slow days. What would your average, I guess, how many strings would you say you could pump out in a day? In an average day, regular 8-hour day, not putting in late nights, early mornings, and things like that.
One guy could probably do in 8 hours, probably 8 to 10 strings, depending upon.
Oh, wow.
There's just so many different factors that go into it. Do I have to go research that string? Is it a string we already have a build chart for? Material, did I run into any problems? Did I have to fix something? Did I catch a flaw and have to go back and redo it? So, like I said, once everything's set up, and we usually try to, especially in the busy season, we will pre-do a set of strings and have them sitting there. They're twisted, but they're not stretched, and they're hanging, so that when you come in and you start the day, you immediately put those on the stretcher and then start building the next set. So what happens is then once you get that flow started, you can get going. Now, doing it that way, you can probably do easily that 10 or more per person a day.
Right. So when you do that, do you go through and just kind of get an idea of, like, these are the latest Matthews, these are the latest Elites, these are the latest, Botex, and you just kind of get set, like, these 6 strings are usually these hot commodities, these strings are usually the hot commodities for the Elites, these are the hot commodities for, like, how do you pick and choose which ones, like, you're going to just kind of get set up and let them hang, like you were saying?
We don't. That would be like the next set in the build order. So we build only to custom.
Oh,
excuse me.
Okay.
I took a drink and went down the wrong tube. So when we don't pre-make anything, so when somebody orders, we start that string. When they order and they pay the invoice, then we start that string.
Okay. Well, I misunderstood you. I thought you said when you're saying you had them like pre-made, it was to try to.
So like, let's say we got to the end of the day and I had your order and Levi's order that I'm going to do tomorrow. I would take your order and get it to the point where it was ready to go on the stretchers before I walk out the door.
I gotcha. Okay.
That way, when I come in the next day, I put yours on the stretcher and I start Levi's, so that there's no downtime.
I got you.
And we get started immediately right back into that pattern.
I got you. Because I was sitting there wondering, because that's what I was wondering. I was like, so do you just like guess, like, okay, Elite's got this bow and we might need like 7 of these and we might.
No.
Okay, so that completely makes more sense to me, because I was really curious on how you were picking and choosing which ones you go through and set up.
Well, and then you throw in the fact of how large the color palette for BCY is. I don't know what color combination you want to go with. No, we would have a whole bunch of strings hanging here in the shop that I couldn't sell.
Right.
So no, we don't do that.
Okay. So when you were going through and talking about this and that with your busy season stuff, so let's say that guy does go through and he's like, hey man, I was out, in the woods, or I dropped my bow or something like this, and blah blah blah, and disaster happened. How long does it take, during your busy season for them to even get a set of strings from you?
We try to keep it in no more than, if we're shipping it out to you, you're going to have that string in your hands within 10 days.
Which really, to me, that's not bad at all.
Right, because it's not something you can just go to the store and buy.
Yeah, you're getting, like he was saying earlier, a custom string for your bow.
Well, and you got to figure that's including shipping time. So you call me.
Correct.
You order it. We start it down the build process. We say we take 3 to 5 days to get a string built. Sometimes that can vary in the busy season to a little more than that. We'll see it reach 7 or so. We have seen it longer than that when it got really crazy this last year. But we have started already putting things in process, hopefully, to keep that from getting any larger next year. In fact, actually try to shrink it. Because that's one of the things we pride ourselves on, as being faster than most of the other string companies on the market. There were other companies during COVID that was part of how we grew our business during that time frame, was shops were getting frustrated because they were looking at 8, 10, 12 weeks to get strings.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and we were guaranteeing them within 2. And so we were getting dealers because many dealers were frustrated.
Right.
And once they came on board and they saw what we had to offer, then they were like, oh, okay, yeah, this is okay, and they stayed. They didn't go back even when the other company's times shortened. So it's just one of those things where that's all variable on how many. I mean, I realize how many strings we do as a company here versus
no, absolutely.
the number of strings that like somebody like Gas does.
Mm-hmm.
Eric and his guys are also, they do a really good job, but they're building on such a mass scale compared to what we even do here that I'm sure if we were building to the quantities that they were, I would be in the same boat he's in,
right.
trying to get enough people to help.
Right.
Right now we're capable of having enough people here to build and to rotate through, taking turns building, that we are able to quality control and also keep those build times down.
Right. And that's awesome. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you've been talking a little bit here, so I'm going to try to see if I can't talk for you for a minute here. Let you get a drink of water or something.
Catch my breath a little bit.
Right. But correct me if I'm wrong. So all people need to do is to get the proper string sent to you, is they can go through and look up BCY, see their color palettes and things like that, which they have a whole bunch different. I believe they go from like even
they can actually see the BCY color palette on our website.
On the website. Okay, so they can go to your website, which is Dominant Strands, correct?
Yep, dominant-strands.com.
Dominant-strands.com. They can go through, find their color palette, things like this. And then the information that you really only need, unless it's an older bow or something custom, like a little bit more custom, is you just need like their type, their brand, their I'm blanking here, their make, their model, and things like that. Unless some of them have they had like a different modified cam or something on there, correct?
Yep, correct.
So there's really not a whole lot, unless, like I said, something's customized to where they need to actually speak with you or somebody on your shop to actually go through and bring you their boat. You can just kind of get a message, get it or whatever, and you can got it 100%, and you already got all the blueprints and everything for that, right?
Yep, absolutely. So most of the time we have a pretty extensive library. We have most of the strings for a large chunk of what was made for the last 20 years or more. So we can get most of that. Now, occasionally we will run across one we don't have. Mm-hmm. We have a network of friends who also build, who have the ability, and we will trade back and forth a little information now and then. So if we don't have it, we can usually get it. Right. The biggest factor is, like you said, make, model, especially like the Hoyts in the 90s, early 2000s. You had the Alphatech, the Hypertech, all them Magnatech and all those. Well, the problem with that was Hoyt was just one. I'm not picking on them. They're just one that does this. They did multiple string links and multiple cable links for each bow based on the draw link settings that bow had. So if you had a 24 to 27 inch draw, you would have one set of strings and cables. If you have one that's a 27 to a 30 inch draw, you would have a different string and cable measurement. So then we need that information. So that's actually why you'll see on our website we don't offer a interactive chart where you can just, I have this bow and ship me a string.
Right.
Mainly, but you'll see that on a lot of other companies, but when you go in there and you get to actually ordering, it'll go down there, and a lot of times it makes you have to contact or communicate with the company because of things like that.
Right.
We just cut that out and say, just call us, just email us. If you call, you're 99% of the time you're going to get me.
Right.
And with 30 plus years of knowledge, I can walk you through the process, and I probably know exactly what I need to know off your bow to get you handled.
Right.
And that way we guarantee that you're getting what you need, instead of the strings show up and, oh no, these don't fit this bow.
Man, that would suck, especially after something happened and they waited 10 days to get it and they're getting ready to put it on, and then they got to get a hold. Hey, Lewis, man, this is off by. Oh man, that'd be trash, man.
or even worse, the bow tech or the person putting them on doesn't catch it and puts the wrong length strings and cables on, and it damages the bow,
Right.
or hurts the shooter, and that's not okay. That's something we try to avoid 100%.
Right. Right. Oh yeah,
So,
most definitely.
yeah.
Okay, what other? Oh, this kind of brings me down to another one since you were talking about gas and things like that. So you were saying that you're not quite as big as them, and I'm and
Oh, not even close.
ABB and all these other places. So, but
Yep.
I feel that like I dude me and you had talked before when I was having problems with my bow and stuff like this. You're more one-on-one. So what do you feel that makes you, I guess, quote unquote, better or maybe different?
Sets you apart.
Yeah. Then
Right.
sets you
That
apart.
sets us
from
apart.
them. Yeah.
Well, you've kind of touched on a couple of them throughout the conversation. We've had one being we're veteran owned and veteran operated. Almost everybody that helps me here in the shop is a veteran, firefighter, police officer, or has a family member that is.
That's awesome.
We're very, very, very much about that. Then and of course, a lot of people can say that, and that's not saying that I wouldn't hire somebody that isn't, because if they have the skill set, absolutely, I'm not going to discriminate against them on that.
Yes.
But it's something that we pride ourselves on. When the opportunity arises, that's something we're going to always do.
Right.
Then the other being that we need that one-on-one, like you said. When you call, you're going to most of the time talk to the owner of the company. You're going to talk to the guy that you're at the top of where the buck stops.
Right.
If you have a problem, if you have a question, if whatever, you're talking to the absolute answer to that, because I will be the one that solves the problem. You shouldn't have to go through 15 middlemen to get to that point.
Yeah, hoping that the right information gets to the right person.
Right.
Right.
So we eliminate that. I'm the one that answers it and takes care of it. The other being the knowledge and the network that I have in the industry allows me to, if I don't know, you've had this happen when you had your shop and was working on stuff, you would call and say, hey, I ran into this problem. Do you got anything for me? And the first words out of my mouth were, yeah, let me think. Do this, try that, blah, blah. If I don't know, I have this magically wonderful person called a dad. And if he doesn't know, I have a couple other people in the industry that are just as knowledgeable and just as good.
Right.
I mean, my dad runs a school. Him and another gentleman own a school that teaches dealers how to work on bows. Oh, okay. So me being able to pick up the phone and call those guys and say, have you ran into this before? I mean, you're talking about my dad having worked on bows since he was a kid, and he's in his 60s.
Right.
You got Steve, who is the business partner, the other owner of Chapman Archery School with Dad, who goes to Lancaster and teaches the Lancaster Dealer School and shoots for PSE. And he's been in the industry just as long as any of us have, and he's got all the same knowledge.
Right.
If not more, even more extensive, and he might have seen something we did.
Oh wow!
So
you got just years and years on top of years on top of years.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Then you throw in the fact that because I've been around the industry and I've made friends and networked and stuff, even my network coupled with my dad's network coupled with other buddies' networks, odds are I know somebody that probably worked for that company. In fact, it's a good possibility, depending on what company it is, I probably know the engineer,
right?
The guy that designed it,
right?
So if worse comes to worse, I can pick up the phone and I can make a phone call or send an email and say, hey man, I got one of your bows from 1990,
right?
And it's doing this, and I need a deal, and I got a dealer having a problem. What do I do? Have you ever had this issue? And they can walk, and they engineered it. They should hopefully know what to do. And so having that ability to call as a dealer and pick up the phone and call your string guy and not only talk about strings, but just anything technical in general, and have that network. And I think that sets me apart, because I'm pretty sure you're not picking up another string company doing it.
Right. I mean, to me, that's almost, I mean, you can't even put a price on that. I mean,
And that just goes to show you how awesome the bow hunting or archery community is. For the most part, everybody wants to see everybody be successful and help each
Absolutely.
other out as much as possible. And, that just says a lot about, us as bow hunters and archery in general of just, what kind of people are in the industry.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Well, I mean, you would think, take into account custom string builders. There's a lot of us out there. There's big ones, small ones, medium-sized ones. There's ones that just build for their local pro shop, clear to guys that do like I do, and build and send off to other shops and dealers and whatnot. You would be surprised how many of us don't compete with each other, so to speak. We are competing for a market, but at the same time, that market is so big,
Right.
none of us can handle it completely by ourselves. We actually talk. Many of us are friends and acquaintances and have shot for the same companies over the years or different things like that. And therefore, sometimes if I need some information, I pick up the phone and I make a call to another owner.
Yeah, I mean,
Say, hey, have you ever had this problem? And I have the same thing coming back where they call me and say, hey, we're running into a problem with this. Have you seen this? Or, and so it's like you said, the archery community as a whole. Although I will say in the last handful of years, it has not gotten better as far as the cooperation across the board and everybody wanting to see everybody succeed.
Right.
You're starting to see money leak into the business to the fact of it's all about competition. Who can get the most likes? Who can get out front? And that's not what we are as archers and hunters and conservationists. I mean, you stop and think about it. Back in the day, we do this because this is not because we have to, not because we need to do it to survive anymore. Because obviously we can get food from many different locations.
Right.
It's not like we're settlers back in the day and our options are limited. We do this because it's something we love and enjoy and something we want to, a sport we want to see continue on in a way of life. And I love the fact that I'm seeing a return back to that, so to speak, with guys getting involved in the business who want to see it passed on, not just worried about me, and how big can I get, how popular can I get, what can I make out of this deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're seeing, I mean, I know around here personally, me and Levi are seeing a little influx of youth like wanting to get involved and
absolutely
kind of doing this. You're seeing that also?
Absolutely.
That's great.
You're starting to see programs like S3DA, National Archery in the Schools program. There's even a local, it's kind of a homeschool group, but they actually go together here just north of me. They took an old school, they closed the school down. A bunch of parents went in and bought the school back and created this homeschool group where 3 days a week the kids are there. There's teachers there, and it's a Christian school. And then the other days they're at home with their parents, and they have certain curriculum they do with their parents. And so it's kind of a homeschool hybrid.
Right.
And one of the big things that they do is they've got a youth program for kids to get them into shooting for PE or whatever.
That's awesome.
And I get a lot of parents that are like, hey, my kid is doing this up there, and they're really interested in it. Can you get a bow for them? And I'm like, well, yeah, I've got, I have connections. Obviously, I shoot the bear, and let me make a phone call. I'll get a bow for you, and I get a bow. And the next thing I know, I'm not only ordering a bow for the kid, I'm ordering a bow for the parent because the parent didn't shoot, but now they're getting into it with their kids. That's awesome.
No, it is. I smirk a little bit and chuckle a little bit because my neighbor was just over before we did all this, and me and Levi were talking with him and stuff, and his boy's been kind of tagging along with me and helping out a little bit and stuff like this, being interested. And then I told his dad, because his dad's like, hey, I'm going to take him out one of these times and this and that. And he just, if we kill a deer, you're going to help, right? And I'm like, absolutely, And he's like, because I don't know nothing about nothing. And he really was, kind of going to do something with his son. Well, they went out, and I told him, I was like, dude, if you get a deer that comes by, dude, I'm telling you, you're going to get hooked. And sure as shit, man, he sat out there with his boy. They were sitting there, you know, doing the son and dad thing, and deer came walking by. And I mean, he didn't shoot anything or nothing. They just watched that deer come by. Dude, I couldn't get his dad or him to stop talking about it. I mean, it was just like, oh my goodness, it was one of the best things ever. His dad's been talking to me about, you know, can you and Levi come out and check this property out with us and this and that, because I want to do this. I mean, this dude literally went from 0 to 100.
Oh yeah,
And that's
that first encounter for everybody. I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember. I remember the first time I had a deer that close. I remember the first time I had a chance to shoot at one. I remember the first one I took. I remember the ones I missed.
Oh yeah.
I almost remember them more than I do the ones I shot.
Yeah, they definitely hurt more.
Yeah, especially when you're a kid and you're hunting with the family, and it's, you know, that back then was, you know, shotgun season. It was hunting with the family, not so much hunting on your own with a bow. And you know, you go out and Dad says, "Here, shoot this target," and you shoot it, and it goes really well. And he's like, we're good to go. And so we go out, and the first deer walks up, and you pull up, and boom, and nothing happens. And you know, you have that happen 2 or 3 times. You can't figure out why. Well, I know why. It's because you get buck fever.
Yeah, exactly, big time. Oh, that's.
And you pull, yeah. So, and until you finally get that one, and then it's like, man, the floodgates open. And it's like, this is easy. Like, why did this? Why I don't know why I made this so hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the big one walks out, and you start all over.
Yeah, all over again.
It's awesome to see, you know, so much activity in the archery world, you know, coming back into the schools now, because you know, like when we were in school, you didn't even have archery in PE anymore, or at least we didn't. No. You know,
I think we did for like a week.
We did it at the local shop, but that was it. You know, like
and we had an FFA, had an advisor that was open enough to go along with me and a couple buddies down this rabbit hole of, let's get archery back in the school. So we actually went before the school board and asked them, you know, hey, if we did all the legwork, would you guys be willing to front the money for 30 targets for a 30 target shoot? And I met with landowners, got permission, got the insurance and everything locked down, and I went and groomed all the trails, set all the targets, and we literally started with something we thought we might have a couple of FFA chapters show up. Dude, it was huge. And
really?
that was back in like 2004, 2005.
That's awesome.
And I can't believe, you know, in just 1 year what it did. I mean, we had probably 10 or 15 schools show up the first year. And then the next year, I mean, we had people, I'm thinking Rushville might have been there. But I know we had the schools as far as like Liberty coming all the way up.
Wow. That is impressive.
Yeah. And I know it's going on something around here because some friends of mine, their boy, I believe he was going to some FFA shoot deal, and he came by, and I mean, he literally didn't know nothing about nothing. Came in, gave him a quick course on how to do this and that, and I don't know if they ended up going, but I mean, it's something along those lines it's still going on around here.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
And then,
like I said, I know they have S3DA, and we have NASP. The biggest thing that I see that's the deciding factor in a lot of that for the schools and the programs and the youth and everything is having a place to do it, and that goes back to the local pro shops. The parents getting involved. It's a lot like a traveling baseball team.
yes,
If you can't find somebody to coach it, and you can't find somebody willing to give up an extreme amount of time to take these kids and go places with them, and the parents aren't willing to help travel and stuff, it doesn't stick around very long. And that is the one thing that I see the detriment that we have at the moment, deficit, whatever, is pro shops. As a company, we have lost 3 shops this year that we deal with that have decided that they're going to close their doors. Throughout the years in the industry, I've seen it come, I've seen it go. I've seen shops pop up, shops disappear, for a variety of reasons. But currently, one of the biggest ones, the hardest one to fight, is Amazon and eBay and direct-to-consumer mail.
Right.
You can get online and buy a crossbow from any freaking company you want, just about, and have it shipped directly to your door, and you don't even have to go to a pro shop.
Right.
The problem with that is where are you going to go when you need help?
Exactly.
Yep.
At pro shop. And if that pro shop, if you bought all your stuff and not went to the pro shop, guess what the pro shop did? They folded. They went under because they couldn't make a living. So those pro shops are the ones that support, usually have somebody around that is willing to donate some time to run your S3DA group, your FFA group, your, because like we have an FFA teacher here in Rushville, but I'm fairly certain she's not a hunter, she's not an archer, and she has no idea in that regard. And that's not a knock on her, it's just that's not the world she came from. So she can't take those kids and do that with them, which means somebody else has to step in. But if there was, we're here, but we don't have a full-blown pro shop. We are a string shop, so it's a little different for us. But yeah, the biggest one is if you've got a local shop, support that local shop, because that is, if you want to see your sport continue, if you want to be able to not have to travel 2 hours to get bow work done, when you are that guy that nicked his bowstring on opening day and oh no, the rut's coming. Right. The only way to have that is to have that local shop and to support it. Exactly. So you have to support it when it's there.
Most definitely. So I'm going to cut this off here. We're just over 55 minutes. Like I was saying earlier, I knew we were going to keep going, and I had to try to keep this ship going where it's at. So where can people follow Old Dominant Strands at on the social media there?
Oh, we've got all kinds of stuff. Way more social media than I want to do, because if you really truly know me, I'm not a social media. I'm unfortunately caught in that in-between world of, I didn't grow up with the internet, but the internet came around as I was becoming a teenager into an adult, and so I know how to use some of it, but not all of it, and at the same time, I despise it for the most part. But you can find us on Facebook at Dominant Strands, Instagram at Dominant Strands. We have, of course, the website. We do have a freaking TikTok account.
I know you do, buddy. I've seen it.
And sometimes I'm not sure that the TikTok account brings out the best in what goes on around here, because sometimes I have to go back and read. It's an amazing thing that it doesn't just automatically, like, I hate Facebook Live. That was such a thing for a while. Was at the ATA show especially, people would show up at the booths, and I'd be working a booth with one of the companies I work with, and they'd be like, we don't do a Facebook Live for all our followers. And you're like, okay. Inevitably in a live video, you will say something that is not, you're at the ATA show especially, you are bombarded with this mass amount of information and people asking these questions over and over and over, but you're talking about this bow, and then you talk about this bow, and then you talk about this bow right back to back, and inevitably at some point in a live video you will call the wrong, you'll say you got this bow in your hand when you have X bow, and then you'll say you have Y IBO speeds and axle to axle, and no, it's the wrong bow,
and then boom, everybody's calling you
live out. You got it. And on live, you can't fix that. So luckily for me on TikTok, we have this magical thing where you create the video and then you don't have to post it right away.
Right.
So sometimes I have to sit down and rethink that a little bit before I hit post, because I tend to rant and rave on certain things sometimes. I'm obviously very, very, I don't have a problem talking, and I generally don't have a problem telling you how I feel about a specific subject, especially if you get me pissed off about it.
Right.
And customer service is one of them. You've probably seen that TikTok. I did not take that one down. That one I felt deserved to be out there. But you can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And if you need anything, of course, you can always pick up the phone and call.
Yes, I want
email.
Yes, I want to reiterate that. If you guys need anything, you go through and you get a hold of Lewis, get a hold of them. He's great. he did strings for me and Levi, another buddy of mine, and some other people that came through, and every single one of us has been more than happy with them. Like I said, mine seemed like it sounded quiet. I want to say Levi even said the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it just absolutely dropped it down. Another buddy of mine, he shot his the first time, and he looked at me and he's like, dude, I think my bow's like X amount fat. I mean, it's 100%. Can't say enough about Dominant Strands and Lewis. It's great company. Go through and check them out. So, do you got anything else you want to add here, real quick, Lewis, before I say goodbye?
I don't. I feel a little. What's the word? Sorry for Levi because I feel like he kind of got cut out of this whole conversation.
Right.
He's just kind of sitting there absorbing it. But
I'm used to it being around AJ.
Yeah. I told him it was going to be bad because I was like, dude, I talk a lot. Lewis talks more than I do, so you're just going to have to sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I've never been accused of being quiet. You'll about the only time you're ever going to be around me and not hear me speaking is probably hanging 20 foot in the air.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so that's my quiet time. Otherwise, I'm even the guys will laugh in here because if I happen to be in the shop by myself, I can't do the whole quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have the radio on and it'll be blasting and I'm just singing away to the radio with no care in the world to anybody being around. And the next thing you know, one of the guys is standing there looking around the corner like, "What are you doing? Like, you're embarrassing."
Like, no,
yourself.
I'm just me.
No, yeah, that's a fact.
So
well, anyway, yeah, it's been good.
I just know I want to say thank you so much for being on here again. Thank you for all you did, being
Absolutely.
a veteran,
Anytime,
and all the guys down there.
Appreciate it. And anytime you need anything or you want to get back on and talk about random things for an hour, we can do that too. So
you absolutely know that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, because at some point we're going to have to actually talk about hunting.
Yes, exactly. And I know Levi and I have talked about it, and me and you've talked about it. Hopefully we get a little slow down time, this and that, and because like I told you before, we definitely want to come down and check out the shop for sure. We'll do a podcast down there.
I mean, it's nothing special by any means, but it's mine. It's my shop. I'm proud of it. I'm happy with it.
Right.
We do have a few small deer heads on the wall to talk about.
Right up our alley.
Oh yeah, and then of course we can always talk about some of the other stuff. I've got a one in my office that is got a lot of meaning behind it, and we can talk about that sometime. And there's a long story with that one, and there's a lot of things we can do.
Oh, there's not a doubt in my mind, buddy. So,
and then one of these days we'll just actually have to go on a hunt and video and talk. And I mean, I'm assuming we can sit together quietly enough to actually shoot something.
Yeah, if you're going to twist my arm hard enough, we could probably get that worked out too.
Yeah, because I don't have anywhere around here to hunt big whitetails or nothing.
I'm sure. So, well, again, we appreciate it so much. We're going to sign off here. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's put up for the time of listening to three fat rednecks just ramble on about strings and everything. But there's definitely good information that I got out of there. So, again, Lewis, thank you very much.
Yeah,
sir.
thanks, Lewis.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate
it. Yes, sir. So one more time, thank you again for listening to episode 2 of the Hunted Podcast. We'll get you on the next one.